Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. Introducing your host for this evening first. He is the host with the most from the West Coast, the Bay Area Brawler, Skyler Greenberg. And his partner, he has colonized, energized, and revolutionized the podcasting wrestling world today. Your Colonial champion, Sean McCarty. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, to the Court-Martail Podcast, the #1 destination and wrestling location for smart talk here and across the internet. I am your Colonial champion, Sean McCarty, here bringing you all of the intense news, the intense matchups, the nonsensical angles, and a tribute worthy of a career of a lifetime, a game-changing career, but I cannot go through all of these things alone because when I did, it didn't draw, and now that he's here, well, look at us now. The man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour. He is the Bay Area Brawler himself and WWE's #1 fan, especially heading into this WrestleMania, Skyler Greenberg. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, y'all. You're talking to the podcast, guys. Well, down today.
I was gonna say, hey, you gotta have that swagger, and nothing is better than that weird Marvin Gaye simulated music to set the tone for the bad guy.
That was the NWO theme.
I know it was, and but we'll talk about the NWO theme in a little bit when we get down to the topic. But how you doing today? You feeling good?
I'm feeling. This is a weird period of time because we're getting ready for what was supposed to be the biggest time of the year, and there's not much excitement.
Like across the board, it's like it's not even just us. I'm realizing like there's a lot of people who are just not excited for this WrestleMania. It's got 2 nights, and somehow it feels empty.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that in the news of the week.
Hit it! Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the WrestleNews with Skyler Green.
That is right. It's the news of the week, and it's supposedly WrestleMania season, and this has been terrible. Like, ooh. Do you think it's just the build? Because we've had other WrestleManias that have had bad builds, but then knock it out of the park. But this feels like, for instance, WrestleMania 31. But this feels different? This feels not so much like their build was bad, which it was, but it's like their overall product is so bad that who cares what happens on this show? I mean, that's basically the point. Who really cares about WrestleMania 38? It's another pay-per-view. Special live event, my bad.
It's a premium live event, and there's 2 of them.
I mean, the 2 nights thing we've been wanting for a while because I was not going to do a 5-hour WrestleMania or 6-hour WrestleMania.
No, but at least to the credit of those 6-7-hour WrestleManias, at least there were a few matches we were interested in. Now you've got 2 nights, and you're like, meh?
Like, the tagline is the most stupendous 2-night event in WrestleMania history.
Well, the first 4 letters of stupendous I agree with if you add the ID next to it. Then we're in the ballpark. But
here, let me go down the match card. You give me your excitement of it, either a 1 through 10, okay?
Okay, alright, cool, yeah, let's do it.
Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. 1 out of 10.
Probably a 3. I mean, I like this pairing, but they're never gonna undo the wrongs that were SummerSlam 2021.
And when they had the chance to do it, they've told a lackluster story.
Yep.
Plus, I kind of suspect that Becky's gonna retain.
Me too. I don't think they have really any faith in anyone other than the Horsewomen and a fat Ronda Rousey.
all that, and they're gonna make Becky strong so she can go up against said Ronda Rousey. But let's talk about that in a second. Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio versus The Miz and Logan Paul.
I guess 10 I assume is the most excited.
Yeah.
Then 1. I could not care less. I'm done with The Miz. Rey and Dominic, until Dominic turns into a Guerrero, I'm not interested.
Logan Paul doesn't excite you?
He's going to excite a certain group of people. I am not one of those people.
And those people are not even very... Oh yeah. Anyways, number 3, Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin with Madcap Moss.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to give this a 5 just for the fact that I see glimpses of what Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss could be. It's not the worst thing they've ever put down. And to be fair to Corbin, he's dedicated. At least he's dedicated. But boy, Drew deserves better than this, doesn't he? I wish he had actually... God, this is going to sound bad. I wish he had actually just gone away during his injury angle and just avoided this WrestleMania like all the other injuries that have happened that have saved people from this WrestleMania. We've been saying it for months now, Sky.
I mean, it's the old adage, how can I miss you if you aren't gone?
Yeah.
And the whole thing about how Drew had more excitement in a match 2 years ago where there was nobody in the arena.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather
do it in an arena. They did it in a soundstage.
Yeah, I'd rather take all the fans away and go and get a soundstage excitement for Drew McIntyre than whatever this match is going to be. But I'm still going to give it a 5 because God bless their hearts for trying.
The Usos versus Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs for the Tag Team Championships at SmackDown.
I've seen one Usos match. I've seen every Usos match.
You're not interested in Rick Boogs?
Not. Well, I would have been if he hadn't botched his Royal Rumble debut. But because he did that, I'd go give 2 tater tots. So 1, I don't care.
Edge versus AJ Styles.
God, I want this match. I want to appreciate this match, and I'm sure it'll be good. Long, but good. And I'm sure have a silly finish, but I guess I have to put that at a 7 because that is a match that is somewhat interesting just on paper.
It's a match that should be an 8 or a 9, but feels like a 4 or a 5 because the story they were telling is nonsensical, has no logic, and created 2 turns out of nowhere for no reason.
That they never really acknowledged and weren't clear for anybody, so everybody thinks that...
Well, no, they acknowledged them, and they tried to explain them with fumbling promos on Raw.
Where even the talent themselves are trying to understand what they've been given. So...
Think about this. When Edge returned at the Royal Rumble in 2020, 2 years ago, and speared the hell out of AJ Styles, at that time, that feud would have been amazing. An 8 or 9 feud, easily.
Yeah.
Now we're getting it 2 years later, and it's... Ugh.
And Edge is fresh off a feud where he was the second most important member of a team with him and Beth Phoenix.
Because I love my wife.
Yeah.
By the way, you can give negative numbers if you want to. Charlotte versus Ronda, which is supposedly the main event of night 1.
Oh, good. I get to go to bed early. Awesome. I'm using my 1 skip. I'm not watching that match. I'm sorry. I don't care. I so don't care because I don't even want to see the train wreck that it ended up being. Every time I see Ronda Rousey, it just infuriates me, and I'm probably going to be drunk at that point, and I'm not going to engage in that. Sorry, I'm sure.
AJ Styles is your main event of night 1.
And I guarantee you that every single human being who watches WrestleMania will have wished that they cut the match off at Edge and AJ Styles. Because that match has at least got the chance to be good. Charlotte and Ronda is not. What do you think, just on your scale of 1 to 10, quality of match, 10 being Steamboat Savage, 1 being Sharmell and Jenna Maraska, where do you think that match is going to stack up?
Probably a 2 or a 3.
Exactly. I'm not doing it. I'm not giving Ronda Rousey the satisfaction of me watching her do things that she doesn't care about.
Okay, fair enough. So that's night 1, which is we have like one really
Edge and AJ
interesting
Styles.
match.
Edge and Styles. There we go.
Yep. Night 2. Queen Zelina Vega and Carmella versus Sasha Banks and Naomi versus Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan versus Natalya and Shayna Baszler. Wait, it's a fatal 4-way tag match? Oh, God.
What the hell are all these tag teams? Is there any explanation why any of these people are tagging where it's like, oh, well, we don't really give a shit about our women's division, so, have at it, girls.
Basically, this is the match to get all the women on the card.
Yep. I'm sure. I bet this is going to be Josh Again's favorite match on the show.
No, Josh Again's favorite match will be Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn in an anything goes match.
So, how many jackasses can we fit into one match? That's what that's going to be.
Yeah, the women's match get to 2. That Johnny Knoxville Sami Zayn match is probably going to be my skipping match.
Yeah. I would rather watch Johnny Knoxville and Sami Zayn have a nonsense match than watch Ronda Rousey try.
Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory.
By all accounts, that should be good. I don't understand what they're feuding over other than Vince saying, hey, you want a match? And Pat going, sure. All right, I'll sell this feud. And he starts doing realistic stuff, and now people are interested. So, Pat McAfee showcase him all for it.
Again, Pat McAfee is now showing that he can be the best babyface in the business after showing he can be the best heel in the business.
Why is it up to Pat McAfee? That's all I'm saying. I love Pat McAfee. This is not a knock or a criticism with Snap and Crackle and Pop apparently having breakfast cereal together. But why is Pat McAfee have to be the standard bearer for professional wrestling? What happened to the wrestlers doing that?
Because WWE wants to have everybody be cookie cutter in their formula making machine of bland, nonsensical raisin cookies.
That's right.
They want everybody to be boring and controllable so they can be part of their brand.
And Pat McAfee's got too big of a brand to have that happen to him.
Exactly. RK Bro versus the Street Profits versus Alpha Academy for the tag.
Why? Why? 2 multi-man tag matches in one night, and one of them has 8 women in it. Why? If this is going to be the big RK Bro split, which I have to imagine it is at this point, so that Otis and Gable can retain their belts, I think they have them now.
No, RK Bro has the belt.
Oh, okay. Well, then they'll win the belts back. Please do not put it on the Street Profits.
You know they're going to put it on the Street Profits.
What's next? Oh, I haven't been giving ratings, but it's been pretty much ones throughout.
No, it's like 1s or 2s, except for Pat McAfee.
Yeah, McAfee, I'm on just for pure interest, I'm going to give that a 6. That's a good rating.
Whatever the hell Kevin Owens and Steve Austin are going to do.
Out of morbid curiosity, I'm going to give that a 7.
Whatever the hell Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins are going to do, because that's the rumored match.
2. If Cody comes in, does anybody really care?
No.
And I will have to say, this is something I was listening to Dutch talk to. I don't think it was Van Vliet, but he was just had an interview recently where he's like, well, my concern, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but my concern is that he's going to be important the first week and important the second week, and then he'll be there the third week, and then the fourth week, and by the 6th week, he's just going to be another guy.
Hold on, are you talking about WWE or AEW?
I'm talking about Cody Rhodes, specifically.
No, but you know this why I say that, right?
Well, but Cody Rhodes had a lot longer than just 6 weeks before he became just another guy.
No, but that's what WWE and AEW do. They treat a guy as important for a week or two, and then afterwards they start lowering him down and lowering him down. Even CM Punk doesn't feel very important right now. I mean, he's important, but he's not what he was when he came back in August.
Well, that's just law of diminishing returns. I mean, no matter who it's going to be at this point, this is it. And really, when you think about it, with Steve Austin coming in at WrestleMania 38, that's it. There's really nobody else who's stood the test of time and hadn't come back at all after retirement. This is pretty much the last of the loyalties to retirement until your body gives out. So,
could we have Taker?
Yeah.
We had Dwayne.
Yep. And we had everybody. Name me somebody.
Bret Hart.
He wrestled McMahon. He won the United States title. You can't say Bret Hart.
I watched that match yesterday.
Yeah. Oh God. That match. Can you even
At
call?
least he won the U.S. title from The Miz.
Yeah. Oh well. Thank God for that. And then he got his leg crushed, theoretically, and had to vacate it.
Well, that was the Nexus.
Oh, what a time.
He just vacated the title. He didn't. Oh. He vacated the title and then R-Truth won it afterwards.
That's a lateral move.
Very much so. And then the last match is the unifying of the WWE and Universal titles, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns.
Well, it's probably the most excited I'm going to get for a Brock Lesnar-Roman Reigns WrestleMania match at this point. So, here's the trilogy. Let's finish this off, and then please, for the love of God, never have these two wrestle in a big match ever again.
They'll wrestle in a big match the following night.
I know. They'll go to Saudi Arabia, and they'll all see dollar signs in their eyes, and that'll be, there goes another one.
But yeah, WrestleMania 38, it is so not exciting. There's a very good chance that you are going to make the decree that we no longer watch any WWE.
Yeah, folks, for all you new listeners out there, we have been ground down to the bone by these WWE shows and AEW shows. And it's, you know, and we're going to talk about Tony here in just a minute because Tony makes himself very difficult to root for. And it's like, this is the state of wrestling at this point, and when it comes to what WWE's been presenting, at least you could argue that Tony's ignorant. WWE doesn't have an excuse to be like this. They're doing it because they can be lazy, because they're going to get money regardless. So if that's the way they're going to behave, then we're going to go and we're going to watch some actual fun matches and fun pay-per-views. We'll do some territory deep dives. We'll do some old school wrestling pay-per-view reviews. So if these two shows end up being the absolute drizzling shits, don't worry, folks. We'll have backup.
But the thing about it is that we all know why WWE sucks. And even, you know what? Let's go ahead and get into that, shall we?
Let's do it.
So Dolph Ziggler was doing a podcast on The Bump and also After the Bell with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph. Now, keep in mind that this is a Dolph Ziggler who is technically in character.
Right.
And it's a WWE podcast, but listen to this, okay?
All right.
It's not even, you don't always get to do what you want to do. It's, you rarely get to do what you want to do. You might be a champion one day, and then the next day you're not on the show.
Yeah?
You go, what did I do? It's show business. What have you done for me lately? One day you're hot, one day you're not. I got these ideas. Everybody's reacting to me in the crowd. Why am I not on the show? And you'll drive yourself mad because sometimes it's not personal.
Well, if there's anybody who understands this hot and cold streak shit, it's Ziggles. And he's probably just like resigned himself to it at this point. And it's like, well, it is what it is. When they want me, I'll just take their money and I'll be happy to do it. And then other case, do you think that there has to be a level of detachment of passion to work for WWE on that basis?
Let me continue reading and you can tell me the answer, okay?
All right.
It's like, we need to get this Roman Brock story on. This is the part, and we need you to do this, this, and this, and you're going to have to sacrifice a few other pieces. A lot of times, 2/3 of your roster is being sacrificed, and you go, that's going to be you no matter whether you're new or old. But when you get a high once in a while, it almost makes it worthwhile because you're trucked along, and 2 years went by, or a year went by, and you didn't even get a win anywhere. You're like, why am I still doing here? And I thought, well, the checks keep coming. They never missed one check, so I appreciate that.
Have you had any other checks that you could say bounced, Mr. Namath? Because I almost guarantee you OVW paid you what they could pay you.
I mean, I hate to say it, but Ziggler basically confirms everything that we feel about modern WWE.
Yeah, it's passionless. There's no soul in it anymore. And that's the thing. WWE, it's not even that their booking's bad, which it is. It's not even that Vince is out of touch, which he is. It's not even that they're making record money with the Saudi money and the TV deals, which they are. Really, the truth is the reason why WWE sucks so bad is that it has no soul. It's got no heartbeat. It's lifeless. There's bodies around and they're doing things, but where's the life in it?
There is none.
There is none. There's zero life in it. To the point where even Steve Austin coming back doesn't feel important.
I mean, the whole thing is that everybody knows what they're all there for, and Dolph Ziggler says it. Well, the checks keep coming. They never missed one check, so I appreciate that. When everyone's doing it for money and not because they love it, that's when you know you have a problem.
Well, but so long as they keep making money, they will never accept that it is a problem.
Exactly. Now, there are individuals who have left, and we've talked about it before, that said, you know what, the money's not worth it for me. I can't do this. Scotty 2 Hotty, Tony Storm, Keith Lee, a couple others that left WWE because they're like, it's not worth it for me if my passion's going to be destroyed by this.
Yeah. CM Punk. He was the first.
The original.
He was the first to finally be like, you know what, fuck this. And I'm out. And everybody gave him so much criticism for doing that. But now you look at it and you just say, well, maybe he was just 7-8 years ahead of his time. And he just had a shorter tolerance and a lot less patience for it than a lot of other people are now. Both fans, and obviously it shows by the fans. Because not even they can stomach it anymore.
And remember, this is 2014 WWE. It wasn't even that bad at the time.
It was pretty bad, but it wasn't this bad.
It was bad, but there were still points of the show where, like, you know what, there are things that work here and there are things I like.
True.
But little by little, WWE stripped them away.
And it's a shame.
Yep. But here's the thing. WWE has no passion. AEW, at least the wrestlers there have passion. But the problem with that passion is that they make stupid decisions.
Yeah, maybe they have a little too much passion.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about those stupid decisions because Tony Khan has decided to align himself with DDT. Now, for people who don't know, DDT is a wrestling company located in Japan. And everyone thinks, oh my goodness, it's a Japanese wrestling promotion. They must be serious and honored and traditional and respectful.
Stop. Wrong.
The DDT stands for Dramatic Dream Team, which is basically Japan's version of Chikara.
It's a little more disrespectful than Chikara.
And that's saying something because Chikara was really tongue-in-cheek with the lucha/comedy elements.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
But DDT is a company known for guys who wrestle with sex dolls, for a company that has guys that wrestle with children, for a company that has guys that wrestle in weird outfits such as the giant panda costume.
What the fuck is the end game here? Who does this help?
You know as well as I do what the end game is.
Yeah, okay. And then after Kenny Omega has finished climaxing all over Tony's face, then what?
No. This is Kenny Omega's attempt to reshape the wrestling company and the wrestling business and industry in his art.
Which he will not find success in. And I guarantee you, they've been going fast and loose as far as these network executives almost pulling the plug on this company. And the fact that they don't want Jay Briscoe or Mark Briscoe on AEW because of some homophobic tweets, which, by the way, I'm not justifying, because it was 10 years ago, but I'm not justifying it. But you've got a network executive upset about that, but you don't mind the pizza cutters, and you won't mind if somebody wrestles a blow-up doll on national television. There's no good way this can end for Tony Khan and AEW. That show can get the plug pulled on its TV deal in a heartbeat.
Here's my question for you, Sean. Who's Tony Khan more like, Dixie Carter or Herb Abrams?
Tony Khan is the worst habits of all of the notorious bookers who didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Dixie, Herb Abrams and Vince Russo all had some weird epileptic baby, and that's Tony Khan.
So let's see. Let's take Herb Abrams' drug habits. Let's take Dixie Carter's desire to be famous and want to be friends with the wrestlers. And Vince Russo's sexual exploits.
Yeah, and just overall nonsensical run in booking.
Basically, it's like if we took all three and we did the fusion dance and
they
created Tony Khan.
Yeah, pretty much. Somebody laid down polymerization and all of a sudden these three are just melding together and out came Tony Khan.
It's just like the most dangerous thing in the wrestling world is a mark with a lot of money.
And no real knowledge of the wrestling business. But
yep.
Do you think they're dumb enough to actually do a blow-up doll angle or something actually absolutely batshit insane like that?
My response is 69 me, Kenny.
Yeah, but that didn't involve a blow-up doll. It's one thing to say that kind of stuff, but it's another thing to have...
No. But to imitate a sex position on TV.
I mean, I suppose, but I don't know about this
Don
one.
Callis is so rubbery, he's a sex doll at this point, so...
Well, yeah, but I don't... Yeah, but he's not going to be able to take the bumps the way the doll would. That's just the fact. And on that note, Tony, what the fuck, man? You're fucking up really bad. This is one of those moves that makes it really difficult to like. You okay, Sky?
Keep going.
This is one of those moves that makes it incredibly difficult to like you. It makes it incredibly difficult to give the redeeming qualities that we do for the matches that you have that are halfway decent, for the booking that you get right when you somehow hit that skee ball into the 100 slot and you get a huge 100-point bonus for a major match, which happens so infrequently because most of the time you're just rolling it and hitting the 10s. And you're hitting the 10s and you're adding more quarters and you're just rolling 10s and you're just rolling 10s and you're adding more quarters and you're getting the A ticket every time you put it in and you can't even get the fuzzy troll pencil topper with that, so you got to put in more coins so you can get that thing, and then you hit the 100 slot and you get 10 and you can get yourself a fucking lollipop or something, and that would still be a better decision than aligning with DDT. Have I made myself clear?
Yes, you've made yourself clear. But also, you basically broke me for a good 30 seconds.
Yeah, because Don Callis is a giant flaccid penis who would be even more deflated than a blow-up doll or Tom Brady's balls against the Colts. And I like Tom.
Whoa. We do not mention that name in this house.
It's my house. He's on my team, so I'll say whatever I want.
You don't mention it in my house.
Well, I'm not in your house. You're in your house. I'm in my house.
But you were in my house via my phone.
And this is
your house.
You're in my house via my speaker. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about Tony Khan. Fuck this idea. Bad call. Bad Tony. Bad Tony. Get in the corner. Bad Tony.
Get in the corner and think about what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah, Tony. I'd say I expect better, but I really don't at this point.
It can only get worse with AEW.
I know. What do you think that they're gonna do something stupid enough to where Punk and Bryan are gonna be like, nah, we're out of there. We're not getting affiliated with this garbage.
If Punk and Bryan have not left at this point, given the things that they've done on this show before they got there and then after they've got there.
Well, I mean, that's if the paychecks keep coming.
I mean, I gotta make that money for my children.
Yeah. Pro wrestling. I remember when people actually liked this sport.
And they did like it at a time when this man was active. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H.
Yeah, we got some news regarding the trips.
So Triple H was speaking on March 25th on ESPN with Stephen A. Smith about what happened last September. I have that exchange and what Triple H said. Are you ready?
Stephen A.
Smith.
Oh boy, what a weird combo.
It's a weird combo, but it's basically a one-on-one interview. Anyways, let's get it going. I had a viral paraphernalia. How you say his name? Pneumonia.
Pneumonia.
Ammonia. Okay. I had viral
Yes,
ammonia.
pneumonia.
My lungs were inflamed, and as the next couple days went on after I got home, it got increasingly worse. My wife, Stephanie, saw some blood and stuff that I was coughing up and went and got checked. It was coming from the viral pneumonia I had but I had fluid in my lungs. I had some fluid around my heart. So they followed up on it, did an EKG and echocardiogram. Basically, the way your heart pumps out 55 to 65% of your ejection fracture. Okay, it means ejection. God damn it. Triple H, you do not know medical terms.
I mean, you did ask me how to pronounce pneumonia, so let's just all say that none of us are doctors. Continue.
What Triple H is supposed to say is ejection fraction, a measurement of the percentage of blood leaving your heart each time it contracts. Basically, when your heart beats, the amount that the heart pumps blood to the rest of your body.
Got it.
So about 55 to 65% is a good number. He was at 30 at that time. They got a quick text message, don't take time, pack a bag real quick, head to the emergency room, I'll fill you in on the way. So by the time I got to the emergency room, my percentage had gone down to 22%. I was in heart failure. Bad. By the next morning, as I figured that out that evening, I had an MRI done and about to go and have a heart catheter put in. I was down to 12%. I was nosediving and sort of at the 1 yard line of where you need to be or where you don't want to be. Really, for your family and your future, when they tell you it's a 99%, it gets real. We have 3 young girls, ages 15, 13, 11. Suddenly I come home, I'm a little sick, and their dad, who's always strong and always there, suddenly is in the hospital. I don't know if they understood the consequences of it, but there's moments in there when they're putting you out for stuff, and you think, is this it? Do you wake up from this? And by the way, at this point in the interview, Triple H is nearly crying. He's about to cry. And you can see the emotion in his eyes. That's tough to swallow. It makes you think differently about life. It doesn't make you any less driven for the things that you do, but it certainly makes you appreciate the things you have more, your friends and family.
Well, that's some pretty serious business there.
I mean, I know we're going to talk about another member of the Clique passing away, but Triple H was almost the first.
Yeah, I mean, that's... Thankfully, they got to it, right in time. I mean, heart events are no joke, as it... And they happen real quick. You don't even realize that they're happening half the time until it's, like, almost at the worst stage, and then there's hardly anything you can do. And thankfully, Steph was on top of it. Thankfully, the doctors were able to patch him up. But, I don't mind Triple H taking it easy from now on as well. I mean, I want to see him, and I think that single-handedly Triple H would get the largest pop of the modern era were he to come. Just having his entrance play would be like one of the most insane pops, considering what has gone on with him. Whether he'd do it at all, who knows, but... obviously we just want you to get better trips.
Well, it won't be in the wrestling match because he confirms, as far as in-ring, I'm done. I will never wrestle again.
Well, yeah.
I have a defibrillator in my chest, which it's not a good idea for me zapped on live TV.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No, I don't want Triple H to wrestle again. Please don't. Please do not.
But I think that also means that I don't think he can be an on-screen character, too, because he gets too emotionally charged up, and the moment gets too big, he could have a heart failure in the middle of the ring, and we don't want that.
No. Which, maybe, you never know. You never know. There might still be the one pop, even if it's for just to put him into the Hall of Fame at this point.
He's already in the Hall of Fame twice.
And... not by himself, he's not.
Triple inductee?
Yeah. Triple H. 3 rings. Sonic wants to know your location. Triple H would totally get in 3 times. And he's a guy who deserves to go in by himself. It just so happens that he's had 2 teams that have also gotten in.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He's never been inducted as a singles. God damn it.
Yeah. So if anyone's going to be the three-time WWE Hall of Famer, it's going to be Triple H.
That's kind of pretentious how you can be inducted by yourself, but also as a member of a stable.
Well, it's WWE's rules. It's their Hall of Fame, so they can do whatever the hell they want. Kid Rock's in their Hall of Fame, so the bar is not that high.
But I think it's just kind of a realization that the guys that we're watching, some of them they get better, some of them they don't. And it's the wheel of time. The wheel keeps on moving.
We all get older, that's one thing that you can't avoid, and we're kind of getting to the point where a lot of the old school by our standards, a lot of the people we grew up with, a lot of people who knew what they were doing in this business are starting to go. And it's something that it's sad. It's always sad to see. But obviously health matters first. And as much as I'd like to see Triple H again, if it means that he's going to be healthier and happier and there for his kids, then I'd rather he not.
Exactly. And I'm happy that Triple H was able to kick out of too.
For sure. And thankfully there are doctors there who also knew how to do what they do.
Exactly. But we need, after such a hard and depressing series of events, I need a pick-me-up, man. I need to sit back. I need to relax. And I just need something to take my mind off. Do you got something for me, Sean?
Well, I might have something for you. And I don't know whether you realize this, Sky, but we had something pretty major in the world happen on the 21st. Do you know what it is, Sky?
I don't know. Tell me, please.
May 21st. What am I, Kane? March 21st. March 21st was the beginning of spring. And it's time for spring. It's springtime, and you know what that means. That's for you, Josh, again. It means a new era in entertainment has arrived. AB Productions CT is proud to drag you out of the God, I cannot speak. Words and phrases and sentences in very loud and pronounced ways to tell you about a sale going on that we're not giving you a discount for. AB Productions CT is proud to drag you out of the superficial monotony and overproduced, oversimplified modern musical mud pit with two industry-busting artists springing into action and taking the world by storm. Abizzle and Knux deliver an avant-garde approach to music that blends elements and instruments of a wide variety of musical styles, including hip-hop, R&B, jazz, funk, rock, house, EDM, and so much more, including an actual trumpet, an actual keyboard, an actual guitar, and an actual harmonica. So you're not just getting synthetic sounds, although you're getting a lot of synthetic sounds, but you're getting real instruments. So there's a lot of good instrumentation as well as the genre bending that we do. It is high time for the music industry to be shaken to its core, so be a part of the foundation-breaking movement by supporting aspiring artists. And right now, you can catch the latest release, The Wax Apocalypse, a 32-track album that took 2 years to come together. A saga of the ages awaits your eager ears. Look for Abizzle spelled, and say it with me at home, kids, Abizzle, or Knux spelled Whiteknux with the space in between, on SoundCloud, Apple Music, and Spotify for this and the entire AB Productions CT discography of over 100 songs and projects, including Retreat, Mixed Bag, Verses from a College Grad, Bare Min, Recovering, Rest Stop, and many more. All just a short click away. Link in the description. Come join the entertainment revolution with AB Productions CT, and hopefully we'll actually be able to do some actual grammatically correct sentences while we're trying to cut these promos before too long, but I'm going on for too long as it is, and we've got a long show to talk about.
Because the thing about it is that you have passion for what you do, unlike the wrestling companies who just don't have it anymore.
That's
right.
right.
And if you want to listen to that passion in your ears, in your headphones, whether it's out in the daytime, nighttime, doing your thing, you listen to AB and Knux.
That's right. That's how it's done. And Skylar has been a great sport as far as letting these promos go down. And they've actually helped our numbers a little bit. So I am thankful for that. It might be slight, but they are consistent. So thank you all for all of you who actually do click this music. I do really thank you for giving it a shot and being open-minded about what you're going to hear. And the thing is, when it comes to things you're passionate about, you have to be open-minded, because when you come up with an idea that could change the face of an industry at large, you take that opportunity no matter who has pushed you to that point prior. And that's exactly what a man known as Scott Hall did. And it's because of him and his partner, and of course the third man brother, we got the faction and our topic we're going to talk about today, the story and the legacy of the NWO. There is a lot to unpack, so before we even start, this is going to be the sparkiest of notes. You know, there's going to be a lot of gloss over, as there usually is with these kind of topics, Sky. Otherwise, we'd be here for 6 hours.
Exactly, because the history of the NWO is rich and vast.
Yes, but it starts with Eric Bischoff luring Razor Ramon away for a good chunk of money to work a third of the dates that Vince was asking him to. And so Scott decides he's leaving. Scott, right before he leaves, Kevin Nash has an incident with Bret Hart where Bret won't take Kevin's powerbomb. He's told that story on every single shoot he's ever been on ever. It has Kevin Nash. And finally tells Scott Hall, I'm in. And then this angle comes about, which they may or may not have stolen from New Japan. Do you see a trend here?
They did. Because what they did was, here's what happens. Eric Bischoff happened to be in New Japan as the show was headlined with a New Japan versus UWF match. And he got the idea for an invading wrestling company for WCW. And he's like, let's bring in some WWF guys, my bad.
That's right. But, you know,
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were fresh off of WWF TV. And this was at a time when the internet and social media and kayfabe were still kind of in its infancy. So people were legitimately shocked seeing Kevin Nash and Scott Hall on WCW TV.
And no compete clauses.
Yep, which Vince McMahon immediately fixed.
Yeah, it's basically because of those two. Between them and Luger, he really got burned on quite a few deals. But
I mean, hey, it's free promotion.
It is. So all of a sudden, this spurns a lot of intrigue. And now, it's difficult in context with this because the NWO is obviously a mixed bag, good, bad, and the ugly. And a lot of what WCW was before this wasn't necessarily bad, but the show needed a spark because it was sputtering its wheels.
I mean, that was wrestling in general because a lot of the issues, because we were talking about the new generation era. So we're talking 92, 93, 94, 95. Wrestling was kind of asleep. And the issue was that there was nothing exciting going on.
Well,
but then the NWO show up. Here comes Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, the outsiders. And it really created intrigue in what was an otherwise ho-hum product for WCW.
And WWE for that matter. I mean, they were losing guys left and right. Shawn Michaels clearly wasn't working as champion because he wasn't drawing any. And even though Vince McMahon needed to change his draws every time that Shawn Michaels came out, you know, it just wasn't working. But having
mentioned this was before Austin was established.
Yeah, well, it was the same year. It was almost like the same time. It was like, what, a week later? Something like that Austin delivered the 316 speech. That's the fascinating part of all of this, is that it was like so concurrent with each other. Unintentionally so. It's just all of a sudden just two sparks were lit at the exact same time, and then we were off to the Attitude Era. But it wouldn't have happened unless Scott and Kev left.
Well, that was just because the companies were competing against each other, and they both needed an edge.
Right.
And Stone Cold Steve Austin was WWF's edge. The NWO was WCW's edge. And
Edge was Sexton Hardcastle. But anyway, you go ahead and look up. There is a match of Sexton Hardcastle in WCW, if you could find it. I know there is one. I've seen it before. And but in any case,
but the whole thing about it though also is that Hall doing "You all know who I am" and "You want a war" speech. That was a great promo.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was so. Scott got away with getting so much length out of so little. And we'll talk about that during his matches and during his spotlight as well. He had an ability to do minimal and get maximum mileage out of it. That was what? 4 sentences? 4 sentences. You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. You want a war? Well, you got one. That's basically it. And him walking down through the crowd before Moxley made a buffoon out of it. But walking through the crowd in the middle of somebody else's match where everyone's like, what in the holy hell is he doing here? It was just, the angle was set up perfectly. Scott was the guy to do it. Look at the adjective, play. And as Kevin Nash comes in and tries to cut the same kind of promo as Scott and forgets which parts of speech go to what words.
Well, we've never accused Big Sexy of being a good promo.
Good shoot promo, but not a good promo. Weird, interesting thing about that. But
then, well, here's the thing: is that the Outsiders declare war on WCW, and WCW responds by saying, "Okay, let's go 6-man tag with Lex Luger, Sting, and I think it was
Randy Savage
against Hall, Nash, and an unnamed third competitor."
Could you imagine what the NWO have been like if they had tried to foist Sting off as the third man? It wouldn't have worked.
No.
It would not. When you think about it, it had to be Hogan. There was nobody else on that, unless maybe Savage turned. Maybe. But
Hogan was the WWF guy. Like, Savage could have done it, but it would not have meant as much because Hogan was the face of WWF in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. And Hogan was even...
Despite the fact that he'd been working for WCW for 2 years before that point.
Yeah, and Savage came after Hogan did. You know?
Exactly.
But the alternative to that, though, is that even though people were clamoring for Hulk to turn heel, nobody ever expected him to turn heel. And that was the big part.
Until he finally did.
Right. Which, you know, it's people throwing trash into the ring. You know, people who got really upset. A fan came in that Scott put the boots to, some serious boots to, as he went in there after WCW guys were screwed over. And then the promo between him and Gene. And there was no better interviewer for that promo than Mean Gene Okerlund. Anybody else, it doesn't work.
Between Gene and Hogan.
Yeah, because Mean Gene being the straight man going, no, you made the wrong decision. I can't believe you do this. So that Hogan had something to bounce off. If Hogan was just left to his own devices, just wandering around in promo purgatory, it wouldn't have worked. It needed the back and forth of Mean Gene. And it's like, it was the perfect storm of the 4 right guys in the right spot at the right time. And I, to this day, quote Tony Schiavone when... after that low blow that Kevin Nash gives Randy Savage, and I say this all the time at work, like, and if I'm doing stuff and there's one thing left that I got to get done, I'll be like, and then there was one, and it was Sting, and he doesn't look too good. And then Hulk Hogan comes in, Bobby Heenan nearly ruins it, and says, but whose side is he on? Whose side is he on? And Dusty's like, what are you talking about, baby? Go get him, baby! And then... you know, the leg drops, all 3 of them, the fake count, the promo, all of it. It was... what do you think about Bobby Heenan? Do you think he did that because I mean, obviously he wasn't trying to give it away, but what else was Bobby going to do? Because he doesn't like Hogan, so...
it was the best that Bobby could do, but I'm sure he wasn't enthusiastic of talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't matter. It all worked. It like, everyone's like, there's no way, even still, they poo-pooed it down like almost immediately, And then, they're saying like, no, Bobby, you're Fugazi. And then they did this big, the leg drop, and it all worked. And then the brawls that ensued afterwards with the NWO. Kevin Nash lawn darting Rey Mysterio into the side of a trailer.
That was dangerous. That was a dangerous spot. And credit to Rey for taking it.
It was mayhem. It was pandemonium. These guys are causing chaos, and WCW's trying to rally, but then they've got more people on the take than maybe you suspect, and they're getting bigger, more valuable people. Ted DiBiase, oh snap, he's important. He's got money. I mean, not that Hall and Nash and Hogan don't, but he's the $1 million man.
Ted, though, he was the richest man there was. Look at the giant. Look at the size of him. And he was the champion, and they took the title from him, and he still joined them. Oh, my God. Eric Bischoff, the executive vice president of WCW. Now he's NWO. And all these guys that they kept getting, and NWO kept growing
Virgil.
and growing.
Virgil joined the NWO, and...
But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though, is that more than the matches, it's not even necessarily the matches themselves. The NWO was the first kind of cool heel stable that really broke out, because when the NWO was around, everybody wanted to be NWO. They were so over as heels, they became faces.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing, and this is actually one of those so good that it actually hurts the business kind of things, and it took Paul White at his Broken Skull sessions with Steve Austin, which if you've not heard it, subscribe to Peacock and then unsubscribe after you watch it so you don't get charged, to go watch the Big Show / Paul White interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Stone Cold sessions. It is worth your time. If you are interested in how the wrestling business works and going from being green to maturing as a wrestler, listen to that podcast. One of the things he said on it was that it's when you're green and you're starting out and you're still trying to figure out, how heels and baby faces work and how they work with the body language. And then instead of getting a heel, reacting wildly and out of shock and rage and despair at a baby face, you're getting spooky fingers instead. So it makes it a lot harder for you to kind of understand the concepts you need to know. And I never thought about it that way, but it's a really good point with what happened with the NWO, because they were bad, but they were so freaking cool.
I mean, that logo, the music, the way that they carried themselves as stars.
Yes, Frank Shelley's Rock House, which was, as far as I know, public domain. And so I don't think they ever had to buy the rights to it, and I don't think WWE ever bought the rights to it. Now that I think about it,
it's the exact same song, but they just put the NWO sound effect in there.
Yeah, and that was all it was just the NWO. But Frank Shelley's Rock House was the theme, and again, any other theme, it doesn't work. That guy, and I remember Kevin Nash said his name many years ago on a shoot, and I'm just blanking on it. But the guy who was saying those, when they were doing those black and white teddy bear sales promos, when you go buy your NWO teddy bear, but they were doing all those kinds of things. That's a real thing, by the way. In case y'all want to look it up, they did try to sell an NWO teddy bear. I don't know how much they go for now. But they had that guy who was like, the following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order. That was another one of those things. They just knew how to market the NWO to make it to where there's a show in El Paso, Texas in 97 where I would say 65% of the audience of 16,000 has NWO shirts on.
Exactly. Also, by the way, Sean, I'm going to send you a picture of the NWO teddy bear. Can you put it on screen for the moment?
You got it. There it is. Take a good look.
I mean, this thing's adorable.
It is. It is. I mean...
And it could be yours on eBay for $15.
15? That's it? $15? That's a steal.
I'm sure with taxes and delivery, it may be $20. But hey, $20 for the NWO teddy bear?
Yeah. Not a bad rate. Not a bad price. But
exactly.
I think it was actually more expensive then than it is now. I think they were like $20 to get your NWO teddy bear then. I mean, like actual $20. So,
But then, okay, let's get away from the teddy bear for a second. The big problem with the NWO is that as cool as they were, as great as they were, there was a lot of ego in the NWO among its members, both on the camera and off screen.
yeah.
And it led to a lot of chaos and issues and overbooking and guys winning when they shouldn't win and guys losing when they shouldn't lose.
Well, and the fact that there was everybody else was running the ship other than Eric Bischoff. Because Eric was in on the joke now. Because Eric had gotten over as a heel on camera, so it was a lot harder to run the business as a result because his name is not Vince McMahon.
Well, I think what it also was too is that we make fun of Tony Khan, but really you learned a lot of lessons from Eric Bischoff because Eric Bischoff did a lot of the things that Tony Khan did.
Oh yeah, and Jericho is obviously Hulk Hogan from '94. I mean, he said it himself, so very clear. But speaking of Jericho, though, he's one of those people that ended up becoming NWO Collateral Damage. The entire Cruiserweight division, in a sense, became NWO Collateral Damage. To the point where they had to start the LWO. It's because they needed some sort of like, all right, well, this is the big thing, so I guess we'll make a little branch off of that then.
Yep, there was that branch. There was NWO Japan.
And it just...
New Japan version of it.
It just started dominating the television, which is one thing to do an invasion angle and to have it really take over and slow burn. I get the idea. But then after you have this Sting and again, I'm glossing over a lot. We'll go back to a whole bunch of it like Six and Savage and all that. But once you have Sting beat Hogan for the belt in one of the most bungled matches I've ever seen in my life.
After you saying something because 2 of the 3 matches we're going to talk about.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. But after you have that moment, the NWO then it becomes the 2 factions, and now it's going on 2 years that this has been going on. And then you have the NWO in '99 that comes back after they're dissolved for good, and then they come back as one unit, and they do this, and it just kept going and going. It was like the world's it was the everlasting angle. The everlasting rating stopper. Yeah.
And it was NWO 2000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Of course. The Bret Hart, Jeff Jarrett, Kevin Nash version. The peak. And Scott Steiner, of course. You can't forget Scott Steiner. But the NWO was responsible for a lot of tag team betrayals. Stevie Ray betraying Booker T, and then that going nowhere.
It ended Stevie Ray's career.
It basically did, really. And, and that was another part of the NWO's problem. There was so many in number. Everybody joined. The only one who didn't were Goldberg and Dallas.
They even had a fake Sting.
Yeah, and then they got the real Sting for the Wolfpack. Because, he's not the NWO if he's the red NWO.
I mean, Wolfpack for life.
Yeah, indeed.
And then NWO, and specifically Hogan and Nash and Hall, they basically kind of destroyed WCW because at that point, we were tired of it, and WWF was making more compelling television with Austin and Rock and McMahon. Well,
and the thing is, too, it's like, I wouldn't even put Hall as the really guy responsible in a lot of ways. Because Hall, at that point, while Hogan and Nash were top carding for forever, it seemed, Scott Hall was doing the alcohol vomit angle. Scott Hall won.
We'll talk about Scott Hall's career in a little bit.
Scott Hall won World War III in 1997 and wrestled Sting for the belt, and that was and that was the most important he felt in WCW. And even in the NWO, because then he does this betrayal thing that we're about to see in a second. But the fact that it just went on for so long, they did the separation only to have the finger poke of doom be how they reunite instead of just dissolving entirely. It wasn't good. It just got bastardized and bastardized and bastardized. By the time that WWE got its hands on it, it was like, oh God, why? Like, we don't need the NWO
The reason why
anymore.
was because they got the original three, Hall, Nash, and Hogan. And watching them wrestle in WWF and then eventually WWE was really cool. I mean, Rock versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan is possibly one of the greatest matches in the history of WrestleMania.
And that was because Hulk had to turn away from the NWO.
Exactly. And we will talk about that Austin Hall match in a little bit.
Yeah, oh yes, we definitely have to. And then the NWO turns into Big Show, Booker T, Shawn Michaels, X-Pac, Kevin Nash.
The NWO did the exact same thing in WWE that they did in WCW.
They got too large and they got less important as a result. The NWO was never hotter than when it was just the three and Ted.
Not even necessarily Ted, when it was just the three of them.
Yeah. And then it just started to lose steam. And yeah, they got boosts by having the Giant in and Kurt Hennig's betrayal at War Games. You know, they had moments, but it was just, they were constant. And it was a give back occasion. Let's have Lex Luger have the belt for 6 days. You know, let's have Sting win the title in one of the most convoluted finishes that involved Bret Hart, who didn't need to be involved in it, and then did get involved later on, and just with the NWO, you didn't need that. Dennis freaking Rodman. Need I say more?
No.
So, the NWO is still one of the greatest factions ever to exist, right? I'm not saying it's not. But with it, you have to take it for all of its warts and imperfections, which there were many of, because a faction like that is not meant to last that long. And no faction should last that long.
No. And it's a reminder to wrestling companies to cut off a thing before it gets bad.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the New Day's case, you only elevated them occasionally and buried them to Brock Lesnar shortly thereafter. So they never had momentum enough to feel like they were on top of the world for too long.
But the other thing, too, is that companies are doing the exact same thing, the exact same formula over and over and over again. I mean, the Bullet Club in New Japan is an NWO ripoff.
That's lasted twice as long.
And not nearly as interesting.
And nobody gives a crap about the Bullet Club anymore. Not even New Japan gives a crap about the Bullet Club anymore. It's over. It's done. No one cares. The only people who bought Bullet Club shirts were people at Hot Topic who thought it was just about guns.
And NRA members.
Yeah. So there you go. But it all started with a man who actually had good intentions and could wrestle, and if had maybe gotten a little bit more respect over the course of his career in his matches and the way his matches were booked, maybe he would have an overall better career shape. But the only way we were able to determine whether that was the case was to watch not one, not two, but 3 Scott Hall matches. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the matches of the week. Roll that intro, baby.
What time is it?
It's the fight, it's the brawl, it's the match of the week. It's tonight, watch along with the son of a beat. It's one fall, the down for the 1, 2, and 3. So don't stall, hang on to the edge of your seat. We got a punch and a flip and a powerbomb too. All the moves and the stars are all under review. See the baby face cheer, then the heels get heat. This is wrestling at its peak. It's the match of the week.
That's right, folks. It is the matches of the week. We are going chronologically forward into 3 different phases of Scott Hall's career. The first is the one that got him realistically on the map because, as I said on the live stream, we're skipping all the, like the Wrestle Rock Rumble and the territories and the AWA. We're kind of glossing over all of that. And we're going right into when he started getting really over on a national basis as Razor Ramon. 1993, Monday Night Raw, Intercontinental Championship, Rick Martel versus Razor Ramon. Your thoughts?
Of the three matches that we watched, this one is easily the best match, even if it was the most simple.
It was the one that most resembled a match. It was.
I mean, that helped.
Yeah, which definitely gave it some brownie points. This match was, as you said, was simple, but it was a TV match, it was a TV match for a title belt on a 1 hour Monday Night Raw. 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was like, what, 12 minutes long, maybe?
Well, there was the TV time.
Yeah.
So there was the TV commercial, so it's probably like a 14-minute match or so.
Yeah, but of what we saw, we got probably like 10, 11 minutes, but it was fine. I mean, Scott hit a lot of his big moves early, as the shine, and then Martel gets, the advantage and starts really just wearing in on Scott, and and then Scott makes a couple quick comebacks. There's this one kind of contrived spot that leads to eventually the finish, and then you got the finish. I mean, it was pretty straightforward. What else do you want to talk about this match, Sky? I mean, it was good, and Rick is obviously a great wrestler. But what do you got to add?
I haven't watched enough of him, but I want to watch more of Rick Martel matches because
you won't be disappointed.
He's a very solid hand in the ring, but more importantly, there's something about the way he smiles and the way he has his jaw and his teeth out that makes you want to punch him in the mouth.
Yeah. His facial expressions really are A grade. He's got that French Canadian smarminess that a lot of them have that just makes you want to slug him. And that was always a big part of what made Rick so good.
Exactly. It radiated heel heat. And the things he was doing in this match, the little slaps, the Hall's head behind him, the feet on the ropes, the playing around with, like, the choke, which, how'd you feel about commentary?
Well, it was probably the worst of the bunch, I would say. Whereas the other matches weren't really matches, at least their commentary was solid. This was Vince McMahon trying way too hard to make things exciting without knowing any of the moves. It's Macho Man still being pissed that he's been shelved for commentary, and Bobby Heenan just trying to make some sort of sense out of all of it.
I actually don't think Macho Man was that bad. And I don't think Heenan was that bad either. It was just Vince was doing way too much.
It was, well, and you wonder where we get the announcers that we get. You sterilize that level of Vince and you neutralize it a little bit and you get Michael Cole, and you neutralize that and you get, Vic Joseph. And, yeah. So, it's just, I don't know. I felt like the commentary did a lot to take away from the match, so I wasn't really paying much attention to it. How much has changed in WWE. But yeah, I mean, it was short as it should have been. I think if it went any longer, it probably ran the risk of being uninteresting. Everyone was cheering for Razor right as Razor was right about to make his comeback. And the contrived spot I was mentioning is when Martel, I think, hits a ring post or something like that, or he goes for a punch, and Scott is about to... He's going into like a back suplex position, but they both kind of like shift over so he could get his feet onto the turnbuckle so that he could pantomime the Razor's Edge that Martel ended up breaking out of. But it was pretty obvious that they were trying to set that up.
Well, it's a tough spot to coordinate, so they were doing the best they can to try and not make it look coordinated. It just ended up being that way. Yeah,
I mean, it happens. It happens, but that's not to take away from, like, overall the tone of the match. Obviously, they got the fans into it, who were all pretty over for the Intercontinental belt at one time.
And TV in general.
Yeah. And it was just, it harkened back to a time when people wanted to watch a weekly program.
It also harkened back to a time when the spots were not necessarily overtly oversaturated. Like, for example, when they were on the outside and Rick Martel does the power slam to Scott Hall, that was a very basic spot, but it looked so devastating, and the fans reacted to it so much.
Yeah, and then I think it was after I want to say it was after the first Boston Crab, where Scott gets up and Martel just drop kicks him.
That was a beautiful Rick Martel drop.
Yeah, it was so funny. It just came out of nowhere. I'm like, all right, cool. And Martel, his Boston Crab looks great. You know, the first to Boston Crab it out before Jericho turned it into the Lion Tamer.
And eventually the Walls of Jericho.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, and have you noticed that they've actually kind of gone back and forth as to what they've called that on AEW?
Yeah, they keep wanting to use the old name and the new name.
Yeah, so they're like, the Lion Jericho, the Walls of Tamer. So...
Thank you, Tony Schiavone. It's Memorial Day weekend.
That's right. Well, we'll get to Tony here in a second, but speaking of commentary flubs, I don't know whether you heard at the very beginning when Vince McMahon's like, well, guys, I don't know whether you know this, but there's a very good chance that a lot of people in this area are Hispanic, and if Razor Ramon wins the Intercontinental belt, it'll be a victory for Hispanics everywhere.
That was just a white guy.
What? What?
That's a white guy in privilege having no idea how
that
to
made no sense as he said that underneath the gigantic ICAPRO sign. And then Heenan later's like, you know, if Rick Martel wins this, with the Quebecers winning this, and Yokozuna winning the tag belts, and Yokozuna, who has the world title, there might not be an American with a belt, even though he's like supposed to be anti-Scott Hall because he's the heel, but he's like, well, I don't know what Vince was talking about earlier, but if Scott wins, he'll be the American champion. Like,
even though he's Razor Ramon and he's from Cuba.
And I don't understand what the point of that was to begin with. Like, why did we have to bring that into this equation or into this match at all?
Well, it's a whole sports nationality represent your country thing.
Well,
it was just really, really fumbly made.
Yeah, really poorly executed. And then this was for a vacant belt, by the way. So whoever won it was going to win it, right? So then Scott wins the belt, and then this is where I knew that this was going to be an evolution with Scott, because at the very end, he's saying into the camera, he goes, "Say hello to the new Intercontinental Champion," and it felt very rehearsed. It felt very forced that, you know who I'm replicating? I'm going to show you by using kind of the same phrase, which I'm sure Vince told him to do.
Well, we can talk about it when we talk about his career, but we all know who he was trying to imitate.
Right, but I think that this stage he was trying to emulate, whereas later on, it definitely became more him. We might as well get to part 2 of this, unless you have any more thoughts about this match.
This is a solid match, and I would recommend people watching it, because I know people shit all over the New Generation era, but there were legitimately good talents in WWF at this time, and there were compelling matches. It's just, there are certain things you have to fight.
Like the Kliq's backstage political influence. But speaking of political influence...
And speaking
how's
of
how's that for a transition? It is Hulk Hogan versus Scott Hall, July 13th, 1998, in what might be one of the most nonsensical matches I've ever seen. Scott and Hogan, both part of NWO Hollywood, and Kevin Nash still having disturbances, so this is a match for the world title, I believe. Or no, Hulk didn't have the belt at this point.
No, this was just a fight because
this was just...
Hogan had lost the belt, blamed Hall for losing the belt because Hall didn't interfere correctly, so they were going to settle out their problems.
And boy, this was... What did you think?
This was an angle more than it was a match, and even then, the angle was terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, this was
go through
Eric Bischoff. You could tell this is 100% Eric Bischoff.
So this match, if you can call it that, was Hall and Nash, or Hall and Hogan, one-on-one, but Bischoff's the referee, obviously favoring Hogan. They mess around with each other for a little bit, doing as much as Hulk can do at this point in his mid-40s. And,
as much as you can do, this was just a lot of stalling and milking for time.
Yeah. And this is kind of getting more to my point, which I'll mention even a little bit later, where Scott gets a lot with a little. Just the toothpick flick got the reaction of a babyface. Hall was acting like a babyface here, even though he was slapping Hogan's head. A lot of head slaps in these 3 matches, I noticed.
It's a Scott Hall style.
It's a Scott Hall thing. He just likes slappity-dapping that head. And so he's slapping Hogan's bald head. And
then he bites his fingers when Hogan tries to put his do-rag in his mouth.
Yep. Which was, a good heel move. And they do that. And they go back and forth. They get a sleeper in, which is an overt choke. I'm glossing over a lot because there really isn't a whole lot of substance to this. And then
Hulk Hogan really does look like Chris Jericho right now, except he's a lot more orange.
Who, Jericho or Hogan?
Hogan, because that belly was getting massive.
That was it's a deep bronze, a very deep bronze from somebody who goes to Clearwater Beach far too frequently. But,
yep.
But boy, it's his beach, Hogan's Beach shop. But anyway, they go to this deal where they don't really have a finish to this match. The Disciples there, that's Brutus the Barber Beefcake. For those of you who don't know.
Best friend.
Yep. And I will say this. They knew that he had to grow a beard and wear sunglasses, because if people really got to take a good look at those bright-eyed, bushy tails, he'd just get the Michael McGillicuddy treatment. And so they did a good job of rebranding his entire body to make it not look nearly as cringe as I'm sure it would have. And also, I think this was right around the time of that big boating accident that he got in that crushed half of his fucking face. But in any case, he's there, and he interferes a little bit, and all of a sudden the NWO now starts just putting the boots to Hall. Down comes Dallas Page. Try to even the odds. He diamond cutters Bischoff, and then the NWO get more advantage on him. Out comes Kevin Nash. They do some sloppy fighting, and then Hall gets up and turns on Kevin Nash. Why? Because.
It's kind of sad because when Diamond Dallas Page got in there and started beating up Hogan, beats up the Disciple, and gives the cutter to Bischoff, that was legitimately really cool. And he got a big babyface pop for that.
Dallas was so good. I mean, Dallas truly got over. We were talking about the NWO's, good and bad. Dallas got over strictly because of his defiance of the NWO. And
it's just too bad that they always treated Page as not necessarily an important guy.
Well, they did throughout '98, and then he joined the Jersey Street thing with Canyon and Bigelow, and that just didn't work. Along with, it kind of faded after that. But
yeah, and the other thing too, though, is that Nash did get a big babyface pop because the Wolfpack at the time really was big babyfaces.
Right. Well, here's my question to you, Sky. If the whole point of this angle was to lure Kevin Nash out so that Hall could turn, what the fuck was the point of having this match to begin with?
There wasn't.
There was none. You could have literally had Hall walk down to the ring, had all 3 guys just bum rush him, beat him down, throw him into the ring, beat him down, and do this exact same end half of the angle, and there'd be no issue to it. Then it would have been fine. But why have 7 minutes of match which you've now told the fans was a fake fight? Why would you do that? Why would you have that match and then have this angle if the whole point was to get Nash out and you just, why even wrestle?
Because they are booking like Eric Bischoff. By the way, if you notice, a lot of the fans, some of them are reacting positively, but the majority of them are just not reacting.
Well, this is 98. This is the middle of 98, and at this point, the bloom is kind of fallen off the rose. They've shown that even Bret Hart's joining the NWO. Flair has left because of his issues with Bischoff. that would end up being, and Flair was a huge part of, the anti-NWO movement, which there needed to be more Team WCW people. And with Flair gone, that had a void that couldn't really be filled in a lot of ways until he did come back. And it's just, this was another one of those nonsensical NWO angles, which was these guys just playing around, just fucking around, and not really caring whether the fans gave a shit or not at the end of it.
I mean, you ask why Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks do their thing, but they've always wanted to be members of the NWO, and this is their cosplay version of that.
Well, the same spirit lives true. We laugh and we stand in awe when we look at Tony Khan's booking and some of the nonsensical stuff that goes on that show, but really, there's roots in the past 25 years and shit like that, sadly.
Unfortunately. Now, here's the thing. This last 30 seconds, the ridiculousness that happens. So, Diamond Dallas Page is laid out in the middle of the ring. And Hogan, the Disciple, and Vincent, Virgil, has come out, and they're all standing over him. Thanks for coming, Virgil, for the 1 minute or 2 minutes of screen time.
50 grand right there.
And Hall's beating up Nash, right? So what happens that Scott Hall grabs Nash, does an Irish whip, but then Nash goes very slowly into the buckle, and Hall doesn't wait for him. He just chases him into the buckle to do the weakest clothesline ever that Nash sells for. Hall starts doing the thing with the back of the head, and then as the camera starts panning away, Hall does a couple of Mongolian chops to the back of Kevin Nash.
And then commercial break. That was
the camera pans to the fans who are not excited to watch what's happening in the ring.
That was my favorite part. You got a middle of the heels standing on top of the baby faces. Oh no, what's gonna happen? No, we don't know. We'll let you know when we get back. Time to go to a commercial. This is
WCW.
Yep. That's just WCW production crew. And I remember there was one interview that Bischoff had where he said the reason WCW failed was because of all the subpar production crew. I'm like, oh, you're the executive producer, Eric. You're the one in charge of all that. Oh my Lord. Absolutely ridiculous. But and then they come back and they're like, all right, well, we're back. We'll tell you what happened afterwards. And then they didn't. And they just moved on to a next match.
They just replay the Nash coming in, and then the little too sweet between him and Hall, and then Hall beating up Nash, and oh my goodness, this was bad. This was WCW middle of 1998. If you wanted a cross section as to what was going on on Monday Nitro, that pretty much summed it up. Exactly. And now we have to go on to the bastard child of WCW, TNA.
At a time that I really liked TNA, until this match intrigued me. I picked this match because it is not a group of people you would expect to be in the ring with each other. It is NWA
and also because I have rejected 2 different Jeff Jarrett matches. And Sean, I'm going to say something right now. I apologize.
Yeah, you probably should have just stuck with the Jeff Jarrett match, bro. You would have gotten some miles out of it. But instead, we got Ron Killings, the NWA champion, on August 18th, I think it was, 2002, against the recently released a la Plane Ride from Hell, Scott Hall. And Scott was pretty instrumental in the first goings-on of TNA. During the pay-per-view days.
During his promos, he had no idea where he was.
Well, he tried his best to make sense out of it, and we know partially why. And Scott's trying to cut a decent babyface promo. Like, I love the enthusiasm and the intensity of trying to take on big guys. You like taking on big guys? Okay, I like that. So I'll win this belt because I'm a big guy. Yeah. and then R-Truth comes down to the ring and cuts a rap promo, just knocking Nashville.
I couldn't tell who the heel and who the babyface was.
No, well, I mean, I always get tickled by serious Ron Killings. And Ron Killings rapping Knockin' Nashville, I'm like, all right, I respect it. He cuts a pretty fiery promo about, like, nobody knows who Wrestling 3 is. Don't you worry about that, because it's definitely not Jeff Jarrett, which it's not, by the way. And, but nobody knows who Mr. Wrestling 3 is. You guys dead wrong. You ought to be focusing on me, because I'm the world's champion. And in comes Scott. And Scott cuts a pretty decent, mini promo, on Truth. And then we get about a 6 minutes of matchup. What did you think?
It was a nothing happening match. Like, I know why Hall and Truth are there. I know why they're wrestling. And I respect both of them for doing it. And Hall was a good instrumental in a very young R-Truth's career at this point.
Yep.
But nothing was happening in this match.
The picture-perfect fall-away slam we get from Scott Hall is always the best. Then he makes sure he faces the hard cam to do because he's a professional.
I mean, again, there are things... Okay, the Hogan match was sloppy as hell, okay? But it wasn't even really a match, it was an angle. The Martel match was good except for that one coordinated spot. Scott Hall is a very technical, proficient wrestler, but he's not perfect.
Well, and the other thing about this, too, because this at least tried to be a match until we had the Mr. Wrestling 3 shenanigans to end it. Directly in front of the referee, mind you. We're just not giving a fuck about that because rules don't matter, according to Mr. Wrestling 3. And yeah, and then, R-Truth wins with, it wasn't the lie detector, but it was this weird, like, suplex, like, inverted face plant. I'm not even sure what to call it. And he won with it. And then the video ended, but this video was like 14 minutes long, and it took 5 or 6 minutes to actually get to the actual match of the video, and it was fine. It was fine. But I can't say that it was good. It was just fine. It was there. And it just, for a world title match, it just didn't feel like it had the gravitas. And it wasn't the fault of either of those guys. I genuinely think it was just how it all was structured.
Well, do we want to say who Mr. Wrestling 3 was?
Mr. Wrestling 3 was the brainchild of the Booker of the Year before Tony Khan could earn it, Vince Russo.
And why did he do it?
Because he was afraid, well, because he's a giant pussy, if you want the real answer, but because he didn't want to expose himself to the TNA fans, but he wanted to be on screen, so he wore I'm pretty sure a women's white tracksuit, and came out as Mr. Wrestling 3. They pulled the mask off. I should have given it away by the flowy frosted tips he had. And then he rolled away. They didn't see it, and then of course, obviously, Killings won.
Wait, hold on. Hall was still wearing his NWO trunks.
Hall never stopped wearing his NWO trunks. Once he got those, he's like, "This is it. This is all I'm ever wearing." And he wore those every single day until he passed them off to Cody.
Yeah. Also, one more thing. Vince, I know you were wearing like a white tracksuit, but it kind of looked like a Ku Klux Klan doing a morning jog.
I didn't think about that, but you're not wrong.
It basically looks like a Ku Klux Klan member looking to join the Boston Marathon.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong. But he helped R-Truth, though. So that kind of debunks your whole theory.
I'm sure it was...
The point being, this was a bad idea. And of all the people to be called Mr. Wrestling 3, Vince fucking Russo, really? Really?
Well, that was obviously to say fuck you to Jim Cornette.
Well, I also think that's another one of those things where Vince Russo sees an idea in previous TV, goes, oh, that's good, but has no idea what it was there for or why it worked. And he's known for that,
Disrespectful
just like Tony Khan. Huh. Well, ain't that a monkey's uncle?
We're seeing a lot of Tony Khan in this show, even though it's not really about him.
Well, but this actually brings up an overall point, and we'll get into this a little bit more in just a second, that we watched 3 matches of Scott Hall, and it's not really through fault of his own, but he needs structural booking in order to make himself feel important. Because the NWO bungled themselves so badly that Scott, of the 3 originals, the one who felt the least important was the one who started it. And that was Scott.
And arguably the best worker.
And arguably the best worker of the 3. And then in TNA, he's easily probably the most over of the old school wrestlers that have come in to TNA, not counting Toby Keith, of course. And
we're never counting Toby Keith.
And, but between, Jarrett's Jarrett, we get what we get with Jeff Jarrett, but Scott had the most appeal, he had the most interest, he was a very good babyface. If he had actually stayed a little healthier, he could have worked with Hennig later on when he showed up, with all of the people that popped into TNA from 2002 to 2004 when he came back as a Flying Elvis. Scott could have been a reliable world's champion for TNA as they were getting off the ground. Not that I'm saying he should have beaten Killings, but when the booking was that nonsensical, it's a lot harder for somebody like Scott to get over. When somebody's paying attention to him like Vince McMahon did, look what happened.
Yeah.
And that's no knock on Scott, right? That's zero knock on Scott, because it's not his fault, really.
No, it's not.
But let's get into it, shall we? Let's start. And now let's do this now. I know we're a week and change late to the game on this whole tribute wagon, but better late than never, and he definitely deserves it. Our spotlight here today, the bad guy, Scott Hall. What a mustache this man started his career with.
Well, what a physique.
Well, yeah, I guess, but that mustache though. Rick Rude was jealous when Rick Rude was just a gangly little kid of Scott Hall's mustache.
Yeah, there's one thing about Scott Hall that's always been apparent, and that he knows cool. It's just they had to get it out of him.
It's his charisma. It's a natural charisma with Scott. It was just how to best present it. And he tagged with Hennig for a while in the AWA. Have you watched the Wrestle Rock Rumble video?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm not gonna post it on this channel, but I'm gonna post it in our...
of course I've watched the Wrestle Rock Rumble
Okay,
video.
good. You scared me there for a second, Sky. I'm like, how could you not? It is wrestling lore at its best. Scott Hall and Curt Hennig, that's what I remember. That the earliest I remember Scott is then, because he was doing territories and all that. And he looked good. He was, what his first finisher was?
I'm not going to remember this.
Tombstone Pile Driver.
They gave him a tombstone?
Yes, they did. And he was different. That was what he first started with prior to everything coming up before he joined WCW and started doing, what he was doing in there, which, the whole Vinny Vegas thing with Kevin Nash and all that jazz. And then Scott eventually comes to WWE in 1990, I think it was 1992.
1990? Hold on, I gotta double check this. It was 92.
I believe it was 1992. Yeah, and they had the Razor Ramon. Scott was right at that time. Scarface had come out, like right in that vicinity, right? And it was really hot. And Scott knew, or just it turns out that Vince never saw Scarface, so Scott started doing a Scarface impression, and all of a sudden Vince is like, "I like that. Let's use that." So that became Scott's gimmick. Razor Ramon, because cocaine.
well, hold on. Let's dissect this a little bit more. Yes, there were mannerisms of Scarface that he copied, but it was a gimmick that Scott Hall made work for him. A cool, calm, but when he gets angry, violent Latino man who could beat you up if you wanted to. I mean, Scott Hall is 6'7", and he's the shortest of the 3 NWO members.
I know.
He still towers over guys.
Yeah. Yeah, like Rick. He towered over Martel. He's a big dude. You know, he was definitely a physical specimen, kept himself in really good shape. You know, and obviously that was rewarded with, you know, the Intercontinental belt. He was a good worker. You know, he was always safe with people. You never hear about Scott Hall breaking anybody's back.
Yep. That title, by the way, was that match that we just saw was the first time he won the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, absolutely was. And the other thing about that is, like, the Razor's Edge is a very easy move to hurt somebody with. But Scott knew how to land it.
Yep. Now, here's the thing. Do you know why the belt was vacated?
I'm guessing Shawn Michaels vacated it because he didn't want to drop it in some respect, because I know that Shawn and Martel had a match in 92, I think Survivor Series? I know they had... No, I'm sorry, that was WrestleMania the year before.
You are correct. So what happened is that Michaels was stripped of the title due to inactivity. In actuality,
yeah, because Shawn not doing a job to any fucking buddy. That's a guarantee. Shawn's not losing a belt clean. I promise you that.
But then it led to arguably Scott Hall's maybe greatest match ever, Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels in the first ladder match at WrestleMania 10.
That match is really good, but you can tell where they decided they were going to go another 5 minutes regardless. And I feel bad for the 10-man tag that we didn't get, because it's 10 guys who ended up not on the show as a result. And
so much so that Scott Hall told the story about how when he came to the back with Michaels, there was standing there a very angry Macho Man who said, "It was a very good match, but you're very selfish."
Which is true. I mean, but... You know, you can actually spot the moment when it happens. But my favorite thought of that matchup, though, is that there's one ladder in that building. Period. That ladder breaks. It's like, well, now what?
You could tell that they did not anticipate that they were going to break that ladder.
Yeah. Yeah, they made it work. And that, which is why at the SummerSlam match, they made sure to have 2.
And now they have 1 million just in case something happens.
Yeah, now they have a warehouse full of ladders that they've spray painted metallic.
But also, it was a regular ladder. It wasn't the ladders that we currently get.
Yeah.
But they're all generic steel. It was an orange workhorse ladder you get from Home Depot.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it was... But it was an engaging match, you know, they made it too. It was a gimmick match that was called for the circumstances at hand. You know, Scott's matches with Shawn were always really good. You know, that's the thing. I mean, it's of course a Shawn Michaels match at the end of the day, but Scott brought a lot out of Shawn that I think a lot other people don't. Because Scott was one of those few people where Shawn would probably listen to what Scott wanted to do and not just completely domineer and have to call the match the way he did for so many matches after that time period.
I mean, we know that Shawn Michaels will do anything for himself and his friends, as clearly shown with this match. And it became a 5-star match rated by Dave Meltzer, the first 5-star match in WWS history from him.
Wow, that used to mean something.
It did. And then he feuds with Michaels continuously, and they keep going to SummerSlam, and Razor defeating Diesel.
Yeah. Name me a good Scott Hall and Kevin Nash match. I'll wait.
That one was probably the best.
That was probably the closest.
Although it's funny because Razor had Walter Payton in his corner.
Yeah, there were some really weird New Generation cameos that showed up. I mean, Lawrence Taylor main evented a WrestleMania. So... it was a weird time for WWE.
Yeah. And then Razor started feuding with Jeff Jarrett, and we almost watched that match.
Well, we watched a match on Raw. Their pay-per-view match, though, Razor and Jarrett, is one of my favorite New Generation matches. I wish I could have found it. Those two have always had good chemistry, and honestly, new generation Jeff Jarrett is probably one of the best Jeff Jarretts.
It is one of the Jeff Jarretts.
It's
all the Jeff Jarretts.
Yeah, it's one of the best forms of Jeff, because I think it was gimmick enough to where it wasn't like he wasn't running the company he was becoming champion of. Nobody was trying to claim he was world championship material, but Jeff was perfect as the mid-card Intercontinental Champion heel. And that was a great guy for Scott to work with to continue the momentum that Scott had. And those two always had good chemistry. If we had watched their TNA matches, I think we would not have been disappointed. I've always liked the way that Razor and Jarrett have wrestled.
Right. It's also one of those things where Razor, he kept going and wrestling throughout the years, and he was always wrestling for the Intercontinental Championship or losing it or wrestling around other guys and feuds. But it never seemed like he was going to get out of the mid-card in WWF.
Probably not, with the way that Shawn Michaels was definitely weaseling his way up the card, the way that Diesel's run had collapsed. You know, maybe once Michaels had officially fallen flat on his face at the end of 96, if Scott had stayed, maybe he would have gotten the nod. But the difficult thing with Scott is that, you know, while the clique politics were big, Scott also had, even at this time, backstage issues. And while he was
drug use problems.
And while he was professional in the ring, a lot of his out of the ring was a problem until Bischoff came knocking on his door dangling the 200-day-a-year carrot.
Right, but I can't forget the time that Shawn Michaels and Paul, that story that Jim Cornette always tells, of the two of them being in the hotel room and one of them going, "Hey man, are you dead? Oh, you're not? Can you give me another pill?"
Yeah, no, well, the way that Scott told, I think it was that ESPN documentary they did in 2011 where Scott's like, he and Shawn are in a hotel room, and he's like, "Hey, Shawn, your heart's still beating? Uh-huh. Here, hit this." And, you know, that was, it was a different time. It was Soma's. Like the story that Scott and Kev have told on multiple shoots where he and Shawn and Kev had 100 Somas. And Kev took 33, Shawn took 33, and Scott took 34. And Scott was super, super fucked up, as if the other two weren't. And Scott blamed it on the fact that he took the one pill more than either of the other two. And Scott defended it. He's like, "Well, that's math, isn't it?" It's like, that's it's just that story always cracked me up. But the fact remains, we're talking about heavy narcotic use. You know, and that's, you know, and a lot of the times when you get those lists of, "Oh, well, how come these guys wrestled so many years and weren't a world champion?" A lot of times it's because of shit like that.
Right, especially because, as we know, in the 90s, drug use was prevalent,
Yep.
especially in the WWF.
Why was Jake not a world champion? Couldn't be relied upon in that respect. Why was Scott not a world champion? Couldn't be relied upon in that respect. And I know people are going to hate this one, but why was Kurt Hennig not a world champion? Probably because of that in that respect.
Same thing with Bulldog.
Yep.
Why was the Great Bulldog never world champion?
Yeah.
On the Somas.
Can't be relied upon because of other problems. And it's not to take anything away from their athletic ability or their ability to work. It's just that's the name of the game. At the end of the day, it's a business. You can't have somebody as your world's champion and find them in a hotel room the next night dead because they took one more Soma than they should have.
Although that's hypocritical given who Shawn Michaels was.
Because Vince had some weird love of Shawn Michaels that nobody else ever received ever in the history of professional wrestling.
So much so that Shawn Michaels was not punished for the curtain call.
Which was when, and for those of you who do not know what the curtain call is, first let me say, why are you listening to a Smart podcast? You live under a rock. But the curtain call was basically Scott was leaving, Nash was leaving, and Triple H and Shawn Michaels were staying. So they decided to all hug it out on Madison Square Garden on their last night because they're all friends and everybody knew that they were friends, and somebody got it on camera. Vince allowed it to happen, so I don't blame the talent, blame the promoter who said, yeah, it's fine, because he's the one who fucked up here.
Well, hold on. Wasn't Vince McMahon angry at them, though?
Yeah, after he realized he fucked up letting them do it. Once he's like, oh, you know what? I actually have a problem with that now. You know what? Now that I think about this, I may have made a mistake. But Vince, to his own admission, told them, yeah, it's fine. It might have been their idea, but Vince let it happen. So that's on Vince's shoulders.
Right, and of course, we've talked about the curtain call before. We don't need to rehash it.
Yeah, and it's not like... And it's very fair to be mad at the boys for wanting to do it. But at the end of the day, that was Vince's call. And the fact that people got punished at all for it is kind of BS just in general. I mean, because pretty much Vince allowed it, but then felt like he had no choice. And then Triple H ended up having to pay for Vince's fuck up. So...
Yeah...
And then, so Scott goes to WCW and joins the NWO and forms the NWO. And sees
Okay, sorry.
And as the dancing girls start to lift up their leggings, those are the Nitro girls, one of whom Shawn Michaels married. And so Scott Hall forms the NWO, is important for a while, wins the tag belts before they almost dissolve the tag team division. And then they just continue, and then Scott wins World War III in 97, which is the big 3-ring, 60-man battle royal. Challenges Sting in 97 for the world's title that he won in, as we mentioned, the worst Starrcade main event that was supposed to be a feud blow-off in history. Faces Sting at Super Brawl that year, and then does hardly anything after that. He gets into his drunk angle where he's vomiting oatmeal. And, yeah, because the booking just got so bungled and there were so many members of the NWO that they didn't have time for Scott.
And it was also one of those things where Nash and Hogan were friends with Hall, but Nash and Hogan always wanted to get themselves over more, and Hall didn't have the sway to get past that.
No, and I also think because Scott's problems were still very prevalent, and the worst thing you could do to somebody is make their real-life personal problems an angle on television.
Oh, please. Wrestling's been doing that since the dawn of time.
I know. That doesn't make it right. That just means that it's one of the worst things you can do for pro. It may sell, but nobody wanted to see Scott Hall as an alcoholic on camera. I'm sorry.
Sorry, but they did. I mean, they did it in WCW, they did it in ECW, they did it in New Japan.
And did it work any of those times? There you go.
Then he goes to WWE with Hall, Nash, and Hogan go to WWE and become the poison of WWE because Vince was mad at Ric Flair or something, and kayfabe. And
I'm gonna kill my own company because Ric Flair owns half of it. I think is the way that was maneuvered. But before we get into that,
to be fair, Vince is so petty he would do something stupid like that.
True. But I do want to just backtrack just a little bit because in 2000, one of the few redeeming qualities of WCW 2000 was Scott Hall was getting world title matches, but they were like fatal 4-ways with Sid Vicious, Jeff Jarrett, and Booker T, I think. There were some very weird combinations, but at least Scott was getting some world title matches. But at that point, it was already sinking fast. There was not being resuscitated. And then we get the Poison, the NWO, and then we see, arguably, because WWE had paid for Scott's rehab, so he had been doing better by the time he debuted on television, and then had one of the best matches that I can remember of probably the second half of Scott's career against Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18.
Even though everybody and their mother wanted to see Austin versus Hogan. I almost said Hogan. God.
Well, stay away from his swamp Laddie.
No,
Oh.
this is me. This is my doing my Scott Hall drug impersonation.
It's Skull Hogan. It's Hulk Hogan, baby. He's turning.
All because Austin did not want to wrestle against Hogan.
Well, who goes over?
You have to put Austin over.
Well, that ain't gonna work for me, brother.
Exactly.
So instead, he lost to The Rock, I guess, because that was better.
Yeah.
I
But then
guess.
the whole thing, though, was that Hall and Austin did have a great match, and probably two of the greatest sells of the Stunner ever.
I would say that nobody sold the Stunner better than Scott Hall. Because it looked the most realistic as to what would happen if somebody did that to somebody else.
Exactly.
And that was the thing about Scott. Scott's in-ring ability was such where he could get away, and it was so simple. He literally just sprung backwards and took a flat back bump. He got so much mileage out of so little. He legitimately did so much without having to lift a goddamn finger half the time. Because he would just look around, and the people would go nuts. He'd turn around. He would walk around the ring half the time, just look back and forth before he went, "Hey, yo." And that blew the roof off the place. The surveys that he was doing, in WCW.
Survey time.
The flick of the toothpick. A flick of a toothpick would bring a house down more than any gigantic Kenny Omega Tiger Driver 95. A toothpick flick would out-pop any Kenny Omega move. And that's the art of pro wrestling, is getting away with getting the most out of the least. And Scott was incredibly good at that. His body language was always right where it needed to be, on point all the time when he could see straight. And as a result, then we get the plane ride from hell where Scott got really drunk and said some really nasty stuff, and he got canned because of the plane ride from hell, and boom goes the TNA.
And doing the TNA gimmick of a WWF guy going there to get a paycheck.
Which he did. Very well. Multiple of them, I believe.
Several times.
That's right. But the matches that he was having were not bad. I mean, the one we saw with Killings wasn't a good representation, but in some of those early pay-per-views, Scott Hall was one of the most interesting things to watch in TNA.
Yep, and those matches with AJ Styles, Jeff Jarrett.
Yep. There was a lot to like about Scott Hall, and then Scott Hall, when the booking wasn't Scott Hall's enemy, Scott Hall was Scott Hall's enemy. And that's really what hurt his career throughout it.
Yeah, because Hall could never stay sober enough to get a sustained push.
Yeah. And it's genuinely a shame. But, you really don't have anyone to blame but Scott, unfortunately. And then we see him occasionally as far as like the Flying Elvises in 2004, where they have that 6-man tag with, I think it's Monty Brown, AJ Styles, and Randy Savage. And they had a whole bunch of weird things going on with Scott, but Scott's Demons were still Scott's Demons. Then he no-showed at, I believe it was No Surrender, 2007. There was a pay-per-view he no-showed, which allowed Samoa Joe to actually cut a shoot promo on live TNA pay-per-view. You remember that?
I'd have to double check. When was the date?
It was 2007. I believe it was No Surrender. But Scott Hall no-showed the pay-per-view, and then Samoa Joe calls out, literally calls out saying, we've got guys busting in our asses in and out. Scott Hall, tonight, you bucked out, you punked out, and you're a punk. And Kevin Nash is sitting there pissed.
Samoa Joe said something.
Yeah. And Kevin Nash was pissed, and Nash actually slapped him twice in the back, in the locker room, because it was an actual shoot. Samoa Joe actually said that and believed that. And
yep.
And it's hard to blame Joe, because Scott had no loyalties at the time. And then look at his 2010 run. Oh. You genuinely wonder, add it to the long list of bad Bischoff decisions, Scott should not have been on television in 2010.
But the band has to get back together.
Eric Young did not benefit from that.
Who said he needed to?
I did.
You're
I
the
do.
only one.
I do. But instead,
this was also part of Impact's attempt to get on Monday Night Raw or Monday Night and go up against Raw.
It's self-served and
with Hogan, Nash, and Hall again.
Yep. They had Hall and Nash. They had a match with Hall against Nash. Be thankful we didn't choose that as match of the week. It was terrible. Hall had to wrestle in sweats because his physical shape was terrible. He could barely walk to the ring because his hip was giving him so many problems. You know,
and that's why they need Eric Young to be the guy to take all the bumps.
Yeah. And then Scott got fucked up and left. And then we get the 2011 documentary, and then Scott nearly dies until Dallas pulls his ass out of the abyss, brings him to the accountability crib, and helps him get back on a path of living for a bit.
Again, we have to thank DDP for being one of the best guys in wrestling, really.
Dallas gave Scott 10 more years at least.
Yeah.
Than he would have had. He made it.
And Roberts, too.
Yeah. Yeah, Jake Roberts. They both made it a lot longer than they probably would have without Dallas. And the fact that, I think that's what ended up being so heartbreaking about Scott passing, is that Scott did get a second lease on life. He really did. And he took advantage of it.
I mean, it was good to see him at the Hall of Fame back in 2011. And that...
2014.
2014. And that famous quote that I referenced when I was doing my National Wrestling League show.
Yep. And, you know, and it was great to see him. He looked healthy. Even when Scott made his random appearances here and there, he looked healthy. At WrestleMania 31, we mentioned it at the top of the program. You know, he looked good. You know, he wasn't going to be wrestling full time, but he was there. He looked good. He definitely took the piss out of FTR on Raw 25. You know, You know, Scott got the chance to make amends for things that you never thought that a guy like him would be able to do. And that was something that I think we all were very happy to see, and it was very uplifting to see. And the fact that, thankfully, thank God, it was just a medical issue that caused his death. And it wasn't something tragic like what happened to China.
Yeah, although it was a time that it looked like that was going to be the case and that he was going to be the next China. The next cautionary tale of what happens when you mix drugs into a lifestyle that just... That
demanded it, really. In a lot of ways, the wrestling business demanded it in the 90s and the 80s. You know, it's one of the few redeeming qualities you could say about wrestling now is that they've cleaned a lot of that shit out.
Yeah, you can't be a druggie anymore. Not in the modern day.
No, not the way they used to, you know, and that's the thing. It's like, I think, and Scott, I think there's a lot to gain from Scott's career, both his influence on the business as well as that cautionary tale of behind the scenes. You know, it's a fascinating career all around because there's lessons to be learned from all of it.
And it's one of those things where there's a lot they can learn from Scott Hall for both good and bad, but he is one of those guys who's going to be always remembered forever.
Yeah. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. So,
do you want to say the quote, or should I?
Why don't you, Sky?
Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
And I think on that note, there's no better way to close out today's tribute to Scott Hall than with that. So we have now got to take our first commercial break. Folks, next week is WrestleMania. Which means we have to review WrestleMania. Which means...
we're going to be on as many drugs as Scott Hall was in the mid-2000s.
Well, what we're going to do, because there's 2 nights of this show, is we're going to see if we can record 2 shows that will be airing back-to-back, probably next Saturday and Sunday, if I were to guess, based on our recording schedules. But we will do a night 1 review and a night 2 review, and they'll be in succession. So it's not just going to be one review and then you got to wait a week to hear about night 2. No. We're going to have them both back to back. Get it all taken care of. Locked and loaded for your listening pleasure. Then after that, we've got Abizzle on the show to talk about the SmackDown he's at the time of recording right now. And we've got Josh again to break down an AEW Dynamite show. So we've got some show reviews from different people. So there's a lot. And, of course, ACPW and NWL is going to be right around the corner. So a lot going on in the world of CMP. And I'm excited to get started with all of that. I'm sure you are too, Sky.
Yep, there's a lot going on in the world of CMP, but you'll only find out about it if you like, share, and subscribe.
And don't forget to click that bell button to all so that every time we upload something, bam, there it is. Right there, pestering you, both in your tab as well as that bell sign, letting you know that we've got something new to bring to the table. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Rest in peace, Scott Hall, and we'll be right back right after this.